weather people out there tonight. This is Shauna Davies, main host of What the Weather, and with my co-host James Skivers and the man who knows how to do everything.
Hey, everybody, how are you?
And we went ahead and brought the Met in right away, Mr. John Davies, to help out with our discussion with our guest this evening, the one, the only, Mr. Evening Forecaster Joe Lauria at FOX4 News, who's been here forever and a day.
Forever and 2 days.
And
right here in Kansas City.
Does that feel that way?
It feels like that. Sometimes, yes, it does.
How long have you been here, Joe?
Let's see. I got here in late 1994. We drove up from West Texas.
Wow.
In late December of 94, my very first day at FOX4 was January 1st, 1995. So... Are we 25 years? 25?
Yeah.
Next year. Yeah.
A lot of years.
A lot of years.
Yes, you are a staple here.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Oh, though you are. I know. We've had plenty of dinners. Hey, Joe, what's the weather?
It's fun. I love it.
So was FOX4, and you've been at the same station forever, which is kind of rare nowadays.
A little unusual.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was this your, where did you work before?
So my very first job, and it's funny that we're talking about this because I just did a career day today for high school kids.
Oh, cool.
So I got to go through the whole resume a couple of times with some of the classes. But my very first job was in a little teeny tiny country station, WCEE TV in Mount Vernon, Illinois.
Really?
That's where the station was licensed to. The station itself was actually 15 miles north of Mount Vernon, between Mount Vernon and Salem, the only Salem with the upper air launch right there.
I remember that.
Yep. So it was in this little podunky town, population 800, called Kell, Kell, Illinois.
One letter off.
Right? Exactly the way we felt too. It was literally a station in the middle of a cornfield. I'm driving for my interview, and you're going through corn, 1,000-foot TV tower, corn.
No baseball players?
No, yeah, right? You were expecting like the children to come out.
Yeah, exactly.
For the horror film. So it was a double wide trailer, and this would have been 1984, April of 84.
Wow.
And it was a family-owned station back when TV stations were owned by families, and their whole family worked there. And that was like half the employment right there. Wow. They had this little news operation of 3 people. One lady who did news. One guy did sports and shot some news, and then me doing weather. And we did one news from 9 to 9:30. And I was at the time still going to St. Louis University.
Really?
And so I was driving from St. Louis to Kell, Illinois, 80 miles each way. We had no information. This was back before internet, and we had NAFAX at the school, the NAFAX circuit, and that was my weather information.
Wow.
I would take the satellite picture.
Awesome.
Right? I would sketch out where Illinois was, and we would show that on the air, and then I would use my magic markers to print out the maps on, we didn't have the graphics. We didn't have the green screen.
Right.
We just had, magic markers.
Super old school.
Oh, yeah. And funny that this comes up because last Sunday I was in the basement and I found some of my old tapes from Illinois.
Why didn't you bring
on
them?
3/4 inch video, which I'm not even sure we can even process.
That'd be tough.
Right?
There's got to be
lab.
somewhere that can do that.
I think there's still a way at the station we have this technology.
Yes, you've got to. That's
so
classic Anchorman
this
stuff.
is what we're going to go through, and as soon as we get done with our remodel at the station, we are going to look at some old 3/4 inch tapes.
Oh, that's going to be fantastic.
And see me with hair and relive the glory days for just a little bit.
You still look great, Joe. You really haven't aged. Seriously.
Well, you're kind. Thank you. But anyway, so it was fun, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I love weather, and I didn't know anything about television except I wanted to be on TV, and my arms were flying all over the place, and
Well, it sounds like you did great.
Yeah, the country folk out there were like, "What the what?"
What the weather?
I'm from New York. I talk fast anyway, and they're like, "Who the heck?"
Boy.
That's
But
a cultural change.
2-3 years later, the family that owned that station opened up a new station in Florida. So they were like, "Come down to Florida." I did that, and that was fun. But that station, this was in Melbourne, Florida.
Wow.
And that station was all sorts of financially messed up.
Uh-oh.
So they were trying to get on the cable systems in Orlando, and they couldn't. So they had no programming except for baseball. We would show Cub games, Cardinal games, Dodger games. Anybody who wanted to show baseball, we would try to grab their feed to show the baseball game. That's the only thing we had for programming. And so this went on for a while, and we did news, and we kind of expanded a little bit, and they were really having money. So much so that they would tell us, "Hey, you know what, Joe? Don't cash that check."
Yeah.
Wait a couple
Give
more
that
days.
away a little bit.
So this went on for a while.
That stuff.
And my buddy in Texas, who I went to SLU with, he was my best man at my wedding, as a matter of fact. He's like, "Hey, there's a job opening out here in Midland, Texas, Odessa." And I was like, no, I don't want to go out there.
How come?
West Texas.
It's West Texas, and it's dry, and it's desert, and it just didn't sound good. They're like, if they call you, come out, interview, we'll have a good weekend, and you could go back. And sure enough, they called. We went out. We had a great weekend. They offered me the job. I said no. And I went back to Florida, and these financial issues were still overhanging. And the Odessa station called me back up and said, "Here's a couple of extra $1,000. I said, "I'll take it." I gave my notice at my station in Florida. 1 hour later, they closed the whole damn thing down.
Wow.
Of
Unbelievable.
course.
So I'd like to think that they closed the whole darn station down because they lost their favorite meteorologist.
Well, we could just go with that.
Yeah,
Blood up
we'll
the
just
station.
live that in Joe's mind.
I mean,
But they were just having so many financial issues.
yeah, I think that's around the time where everything was changing.
It was a mess.
And,
Yeah, it was
and
a
everybody,
mess.
I think CNN was on the air at that point. And, we're going to 24-hour news cycles at this point.
So this would have been, I think, I'm trying to remember, late 80s
Okay.
that I went out to West Texas, stayed there for about 5 years, and I actually loved it.
Yeah.
Good.
No state income tax. You could see for miles.
Yeah.
I miss that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could, what I didn't realize at the time was if you just drove an hour and a half south of Midland, Texas, you're seeing mountainous views down towards the Big Bend. And
Beautiful
it's
country.
country.
Yeah.
I had no clue about the dry line and the West Texas culture and of storms and the retreating dry line and all that other stuff, but I learned quick. But that was actually a pretty good experience for about 5 years. And then I did everything I could do there, traveled all over the place in West Texas, and then Kansas City called, and late 1994, like, let's do it. Come up to Kansas City.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
And you've been here ever since.
Ever since.
And you won't leave, will you?
Not voluntarily. Maybe the station's got some other ideas for me down the road. But
Well,
no,
I'll fight them myself.
Yeah,
No, he can't leave.
I want to stay. I don't want to start anywhere else.
You actually get 4 seasons here.
You get 4, and if you're
Yeah.
into weather, you want to be in a place with
Exactly.
4 seasons.
Right.
And if you could have 4 seasons in one day, even better, because it gives you something to talk about. And I thrive on things to talk about.
Yes.
So,
It's never boring.
never boring.
Oh.
And I love 75-degree days, but I don't know how they do it out in San Diego.
I couldn't do it.
Right. Talking about the
I'd lose
weather.
my mind.
Arizona, it's 115 degrees.
Yeah, hot.
2 months in a row.
Yep. Might get a monsoon storm if you're
Right,
lucky.
if
but-
you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're lucky. So I thoroughly enjoy it here. There is one place that I would consider leaving here for, and I won't be doing this anytime soon. But my wife's from northern Michigan, and we love it up there.
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful.
Traverse City, that
Oh, yeah.
Arizona.
Marquette.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Gorgeous.
Love it.
And Traverse City's actually a little TV market. And we would consider, we would have a discussion
Okay.
about
You would
that
entertain
if I
the
ever
idea.
decided,
Yeah.
if Traverse City ever came a calling, we'd move up there in a heartbeat. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think they could. From a financial standpoint, I don't think we could ever swing that. So,
Well, and you're so established here.
see,
too.
that's just, and you hate to start all over again.
right.
And it would be back to smaller market TV.
That's a tough call.
And part of that is sort of weirdly interesting.
Mhm.
The other part of it is like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. So I love it here. I've got great people. Why leave? Why move? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, like I said, you're very well known here by everybody, and
kind.
you know
Thank you.
everybody, and so I understand that. And it's really hard to leave once.
I think once you put down roots and once you get that hopeful connection to the viewer, or at least our viewers, maybe
yeah,
I should say
because
that.
they trust you,
Right.
they know you.
So they give me some leeway in playing around, and I, try to return that with me getting all Joe on them with facts and numbers and blah 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 blah.
Golf tournaments.
Whatever it takes. And the station, we're lucky in a large sense because the station
Right.
figured out a long time ago, let them be them. Try not to cross that line in the sand,
Yes.
which ever so often we stick our big toe on. But that's our way to be,
Right.
and it separates us. And they're having success with that, so we
absolutely.
run with that.
Perfect.
Well, so there's all kinds of weather we could talk about.
Bring it
But-
on.
So I thought we'd just kind of like stick with more severe
Okay.
weather and talk about some big events that has
Okay.
happened here in Kansas City since you've
Yeah.
been a forecaster here all these for 65
Or
years.
65.
So let's go ahead and start with the most recent one.
May.
Linwood, Kansas, May 28th, correct?
Correct.
That was a biggie.
So
That was one that John actually took cover for the first time.
you were here, right?
Well, actually, no, we were chasing up in North Platte, Nebraska,
The day
and we
before.
raced home the day before, and we saw,
With the knowledge that something could happen.
yeah,
Okay.
and,
Well,
and we always want to be home first.
Because we have family here and we
Right.
have friends. And I remember getting up that morning in North Platte and took one quick look at it. And I went and woke up Sean. I says, this is going to be a difficult day. We need to get back to Kansas City
Yeah.
right now.
So we blasted
did.
home. Of course, we went I-80 and we were in Coors the whole way. And then finally could start to see stuff once we went south on I-29. Anyways, so we got home maybe about an hour before things
Yeah, I'd
really
say about-
ramped up.
Yeah.
The thing I remember about that day.
Yeah, what'd you think that morning? I mean,
See,
what did
that
you?
was, and there were so many shades to not only what happened that May day most recently, but back in 2003.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my
Before.
next.
It started
topic.
out at, with that overcast, dense cloud cover. And I forget if it was around 2 or 3 o'clock that I was up in the newsroom saying, get ready, get ready, get ready. But right now, at least, these clouds are
Right.
still hanging tough.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, we were still, pretty well capped for all intents and purposes. And I was like, interesting. Let's see what happens here. And then at 4 o'clock, I think some mist started, or maybe 3 o'clock. 3 to 4 o'clock, there was some misty little showers or something on them, especially here up north of I-70. I was like, interesting. That little front's firming up a little bit more now.
Sure.
And then when those first echoes started to pop, what was it, down towards Emporia?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overbrook. I was like, oh, here we go.
Right.
But I do remember, I forget, like I said, it was 2, 3 o'clock. But I sent a message out to the Weather Service saying, about this cap.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe we could avoid the worst, maybe. But then once that first cell went to town,
it was game
here
We were all
go.
watching
It's
that.
broke, and here we go.
Well, it went tornado warned pretty quick, I think. Right
And
out
it
of the
did.
gate.
It did. And if I remember correctly, it went tornado warned right around Emporia down towards
Yeah, it was south.
Yeah, it was,
south of there.
I'm
Lyon
not sure if it
County?
was south or just north of Emporia.
Okay,
It was
Osage
somewhere in
County,
there.
yeah.
Now,
it
was
Osage
that
County, yeah.
was that when it was
It was early on.
that
was like
was that the RFD tornado? Or was
That was actually a little bit later. I remember the first tornado warning was sometime after 4 o'clock, I believe, and or was it slightly after 5?
I think it was still trying to get its act together.
I think
at
so,
that
too.
point.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And there was supposedly a tornado reported just briefly south of Osage City,
Yeah.
somewhere around probably a little bit after 5, I think. But,
And I think I had heard from some spotters too that it was a little grunt. It wasn't looking all that.
yeah,
It wasn't looking
it was
all
very-
of that.
Very grungy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
It
grungy.
was.
Very
Yeah,
grungy.
exactly.
And that kind of was like,
That's when
Interesting.
you're right by the stationary
Yeah.
front. That's what you're going to
But
get.
the first real tornado from that touched down about 5:49 over there, just southeast of Overbrook.
Overbrook, right? Yeah.
That's right.
And then I think Globe kind of got into the
Yeah,
mix
just
about
north
that
of
whole
Globe.
thing.
So
Yeah.
once you
That's
started
where
hearing
there
these
were some
reports
issues.
come in, what are you thinking?
So, we were already within news. And one of the complications for any TV station is that area is, it's kind of split up. It's mostly our viewing area responsibility,
Right.
but Topeka's got a big play in that one too.
Right.
The Topeka market. So once it went tornado warned, coming out of Overbrook, and we kept saying, heads up Douglas County, heads up Douglas County, heads here. It's give it another 10 minutes, whatever it was. Once Douglas County goes under a warning, we're going to go wall to wall.
Right.
So that happened at 5:50-ish?
Yeah, it's right around that
Okay.
time. Right around that time.
And, it's funny. I can remember this. I don't know where my car keys are right now.
No, I understand.
So from there on in, we were wall to wall. And
Did you send people out at that point?
yeah, so we had sent out earlier in the afternoon, Michelle and Jerry. Jerry's one of our photojournalists who has chased storms for years, came up from Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very familiar with the give and play of the whole setup. And so they were out chasing, and, then you're looking at radar, and then you're starting to hear that something's no doubt on the ground, and then you hear it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then lo and behold, you start hearing these, quarter mile wide, half mile wide type situations, and you're like, oh.
Were they sending photos or video in?
So they were, we were taking their video that they were providing us, and it was, as you guys probably well remember, there was so much rain involved with all this mess. It was tough to make out.
Very high precipitation.
Yeah, where the
Super
tornado was, and where just rain curtains. And so we were showing that, and that then once it got closer to Linwood and it started to really kind of pick up the debris and stuff, and then you start getting the radar indications of
and
debris
it
balls
really
and stuff.
got that.
And it
HP
really
look.
got that.
Yep.
And from a radar standpoint, I think that was the first time I ever showed the correlation coefficient.
Dual pole product.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the air like that.
Wow.
Because it was invaluable to us.
Oh,
Yeah, it
sure.
shows the
In
debris
that
directly.
particular, in that particular situation. The ironic thing is,
And it really does help with HPs.
it does.
It really does. So
And the funny thing is, even to backtrack a little further, there was that day, and then 5 days earlier, the history, a little more behind the scenes stuff, we had just gotten a new set about 6 months earlier, and that was our second severe weather episode with the new set. 5 days earlier, there were those little weak spin-ups on a Friday night
Okay, I remember that.
on the Missouri side by Lake Lotawana,
Right.
Lake Lafayette. over towards the east of here, and we were doing continuous coverage there.
remember
It was Carly and myself, and we were, it was a good, I hate to say the word, but practice
Right.
for what was coming 5
Right.
days, or whatever it was.
Because
5
that
days.
was not a real high index
Right.
severe weather event, but it still needed to be covered. And so
Right.
that worked out pretty well.
And
I
that
bet.
worked out well. And we were like, okay, so next time this happens, we need to do this. You need to do that. We need to do this. We need to do better here. And then, so the next day is, the next time is
right.
Linwood. And it was, from a performance standpoint, I thought we were very much more on point. You never know coverage-wise. You have an idea, hopefully. But there are all sorts of wrinkles. It's all live.
Your adrenaline's
adrenaline's going.
You're trying to get
You're-
out the
you're-
latest info, and it's constantly evolving and changing. I could just imagine.
And you want to be on the air. By the same token, if it's not anything, you don't want to be on the air. We were lucky we were in news, so
Right.
we were going to be on the air anyway.
Right.
And so the programming decisions didn't have to be made.
Right.
Then you go through the news, and I'm taking Linwood out of this, but for the life of a meteorologist, then you're butting up to Wheel of Fortune.
Uh-oh.
And you've got
Gotta be
audience
careful.
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't talk too much about that. 'Cause
On
that's something
thin
later
ice.
I'm going to ask you about.
Okay, so anyway,
That's in my
the Linwood
funny
situation, right?
broadcasting.
There was a big
section.
hunker on the ground.
Yeah.
Yes, Wheel of Fortune's going.
Uh-oh.
So, and nobody complained about that.
Good.
But
Shouldn't.
yeah, that was, I remember that, and I remember 2003, the 2003 thing too.
That was a great one. That was my first real tornado chase.
That, to me, that was, I'm trying to remember, but I remember the night before on that event sending a note to the newsroom saying, let's make sure our ducks are in a row
Right.
on this event, or
I was
on
chasing-
this likely event. Something bad's going to happen.
Yep.
I don't remember. I talked to the newsroom for the late May Linwood tornado. Let's be ready for anything here.
Right.
But I don't think I had the confidence in this one as I had for the 2003
I agree with
one.
you.
Okay.
There was something still a little murky to me, whether it was the cap or.
Well, the environment to me, although we were north of the front, worked over, looking south as we were going.
It wasn't
east back
heating
home.
up all that
Yeah,
greatly.
It seemed like there was something missing.
Yes.
And of course, we didn't have any data except for, my cell phone. That was it. So we weren't looking, but it didn't really scream out to me, this is dangerous, until we started going south. Once we got closer to home and I started looking southeast or southwest, I was like, now I'm not so sure.
And they started clearing out down there.
Exactly.
The sun came out.
Yeah.
And on May
we got back
4th
to Kansas City. The wind was howling out of the
Yeah,
southeast.
May
I
4th,
remember
which I
that.
want to talk about, and I was chasing for a competitor station. It was same thing, cold and drizzly. And
Right,
it
that
only
morning.
took about 30 minutes of heating.
Yep. And
then
boom, off to the races.
Boom, yep.
Quite literally.
And that's how Linwood was too.
Yes.
Only I didn't expect it to be so HP, and I don't know why I didn't. Looking back, of course, I get why.
I think the amazing, of all the different amazing things about that Linwood tornado, including the fact that nobody lost their life.
That's a biggie, right? there.
EF4
It's
tornado
amazing.
for the love of
Incredible.
God. Was, and this was after the fact, this was the following day. And during our coverage, I kept remarking about how, to me, amazingly similar the path of 2003 was, and the path of what this thing was sort of kind of doing. And the next day or 2 days after, I forget, it was next day maybe, when I overlaid the two paths together and showed them on the news, I was just, it's just blown away. I mean, they were so
Similar.
Multiple touchdowns.
similar, and
Miles apart.
heading right towards, Wyandotte County, heading right towards the Speedway, and
Right to Clay Como, Liberty.
yep. I
Ford
mean,
plant.
It was actually heading right for our house, right here,
Yeah.
where we're sitting. We actually went down in our bathroom.
Yeah,
to
across
cover.
there, 169 and
Yeah, I mean, it was
Inglewood?
if that sucker would
Which
have
is
held
about
together.
what 2003 did, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
2003. Yeah.
2003 back then, I drove all the way out to Topeka and then up north with Rick Schmidt. And then if I would have just stayed at my house on Berry Road
Could've chased-
and just gone
Chased
south
the neighborhood.
5
Yeah.
miles, I would have seen it go right by.
Stand on your
and-
roof, Shauna.
Why
Yeah,
drive
I
on
think
it?
every
goes.
I think every storm chaser has that story.
Yeah.
Oh,
one
yeah.
time
10
or
of them.
another.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so this is going on. The reports are coming in, and you're wall to wall. It's over. I mean, what was your thoughts on that storm? I mean, have you looked at any of the work that has been done?
So, after the fact, I had some confusion. I think would probably be the best. You're covering the
It really
storm,
was.
and you're okay. That whole process was done, and that whole process went as good as we could do. I thought. Then after the fact, you start thinking about environments and why did this happen,
Right.
and why didn't this happen, and why did it, cycle there, and I still think an underrated part of that particular night was what happened in Clay County around the north of Excelsior
Yeah.
Springs,
Yeah.
because that was trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that
it-
was trouble with
it
a
just-
capital T if it would have been
Yep.
Just
whatever 10,
dodged
5
the-
miles south.
Oh, it would have been horrible.
Yeah, right through Excelsior Springs.
Yeah, we were sitting in the basement looking at our radar, and we kept looking for the new meso to develop northeast. I think one tried over just north of here.
Yeah, that was
It fell
the
apart.
Clay Como.
and then it
Oh, yeah.
produced further east over near Chelsea or no.
Because if I remember, at one point, again, don't know where my keys are, but I could probably spit this stuff out. At 7:30 or so that evening, if I remember, all the warnings were dropped.
Yes.
So the storm was in a cycling phase, and it was not looking obviously nearly as healthy as it was about an hour beforehand. And that was right around Platte County, if I remember, and going into Clay County at the time. I
Right.
think all warnings were dropped, and I'm not even sure if there were severe thunderstorm warnings in effect at that point. I think, and maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong on that.
But
But there were not that many storms.
Yeah,
You
I
know-
think we may have had a warning, but when it came through here at that point, we knew it was done. I mean, it's over.
And so,
And there, I didn't see anything in the parameters to support it any further. So we knew, okay, we're fine.
and then
But-
it cycles, and then it goes,
and then it
right
goes,
through,
yeah.
and
then
here
as
we
soon
go
as
again.
Yeah.
put down our guard, and
right.
we're looking at our friends to our northeast. And,
Right. So,
Right.
but it was a memorable night. 2003 was memorable. I feel that Kansas City is extremely lucky that it was 16 years between
Yes.
tremendously memorable events. With
Talking
that
about
said, we've
six
had
split.
right?
Yeah.
With that said, we've had like a bazillion EF0 tornadoes in the metro these days. So, I think we all knew that at some point, luck is, we're going to run out of luck. And
Well, yeah,
this whole
we're,
thing
we're
could
due for
happen.
another Ruskin
Yes.
Heights. We are so overdue
Yes.
for another biggie.
Yes.
And
I was heartened by the Weather Service, who I thought they were on their game. And then when they went to Linwood the following day to do their damage evaluations and their assessments, that I remember an email that Andy Bailey sent out saying that every single person that they talked to concerning the damage assessment, every single one of them said they were watching local television.
really,
So they weren't
Wow.
relying on their apps.
Huh.
They weren't relying on Facebook and the 15 neighbors or
right?
Good.
33 grandparents
So they were,
saying,
Yeah.
that they would probably find out the next day, oh, there's a tornado coming.
Yeah, sifting
Oh,
through
wait, it's
cat
tomorrow.
photos.
Right.
Yeah.
Cat videos. So, so that was very heartening, and
Yes. Yeah.
that the information was there. They knew what to do with the information, and they took action with the information they had. So I thought that was very heartening, and we kind of saw this too in Dallas.
Yeah, that
You
was
have
amazing to me. A tornado after dark on a Sunday night and nobody got killed. Wow.
Everybody's home because they're all watching TV.
Yeah.
And they're all watching the football game. And EF3?
Yeah, it was an EF3,
EF3.
the main tornado.
Churns through a significantly populated
North Dallas.
Right.
Yeah.
part of Dallas.
Richardson. Yeah.
And thank goodness nobody
Thank goodness.
died.
So that is heartening, and it makes you wonder if maybe people are paying a little more attention. And maybe a set of circumstances too about the time of day.
And I think there might be something along those lines. And I think sometimes we, as a weather enterprise, we get on ourselves too hardly sometimes. Well, blank number of people died.
Right.
Okay. So I think the weather enterprise takes it very hard sometimes when that happens, when in reality we did all we could do. We could always look back and say, hey, could we have done something differently? But if all the information is out there,
then it's up to the people to
then
pay
it's up to
attention
the
to.
people
Exactly.
to take personal responsibility.
It's exactly
Right.
that.
It's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't
Right.
make him drink.
So
And didn't you do some work about watches and warnings? Because that's still my number one thing that I have to conquer.
I assume you have 2
people.
hours for this conversation now?
No, I'm
Absolutely.
still out there preaching
Yeah.
that. And I went to the doctor like a month ago for a physical, and the gal was drawing blood, and I was talking to her about storms, and said, now again, I get confused because they both start with a W.
Right.
And I'm like, and it's so weird as a weather person. Because
You're like,
to me,
how
it
can
seems
this possibly
obvious.
be confusing? But people are confused.
But people
Yeah.
are, and it's like, what do we do about it? Didn't you do some work on that?
So I did it was a fun project that I did that I loved. It was a passion project. And I think most people know that within the weather community that I will gently stir the pot every so often.
It's good to do.
And one of the things that sort of was driving me crazy and still does, I mean, we haven't gotten any further along in this, and I think it's kind of dying a slow death, which is fine. It's what I kind of expected it to do. But I have this feeling, and I'm not alone, that there are just way too many severe thunderstorm warnings that people don't pay attention to. Nobody pays attention
I'm
to
right
severe
there with
thunder.
you on that, Joe.
And I think
Big bunch
most
of
of my colleagues are with me.
Yep.
Most of my colleagues within the government are with me.
Sure.
I just think that it's one of those issues that, yeah, we know it's a problem, but we don't know what to do about it. So I'm in favor of strengthening the criteria for the initial issuance of a severe thunderstorm warning to try to kind of reduce the
It's a good idea.
number. That's all I care about is reducing the number.
Right.
And I showed, I pointed out, I looked through 1,000 severe thunderstorm warnings from some of the local offices here. And I pointed out that if we would just change the minimum winds to 70,
Right.
maybe bump up the hail to 1.5 inches or something,
Yeah.
that you could go from close to 300 warnings a year on average to around 30.
Yes.
And it just seems to me that if we tell people 30 times about something instead of 300 times about something,
They will.
that
pay
there's
attention.
a chance that they might take this
Yeah,
a
they're
little
not
more
they're not
seriously.
filtering it out like they.
Exactly.
Well, I kind of liken it to hurricanes. We have a hurricane coming. Oh my gosh, it's going to decimate everybody, and then it doesn't, or it veers,
Right.
takes another path. Well, then the next one comes around. Everybody's like, "Yeah, right. That's what
What
you said about the
if?
last
Yes.
one." So it's the same thing. It's the same mentality. And of course, then you have your general optimism bias with the public. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to
me.
happen here.
Right.
Right.
And most of the time it doesn't happen here.
Right,
From
right.
especially from a thunderstorm standpoint.
So that's why I agree with you. It needs
Yeah.
to be bumped up. So when those warnings are out, they're more likely to pay attention.
The government wheels move so slowly.
Yeah.
Indeed, they do.
And when I did my presentation about this to the National Weather Association last summer of 18,
That's right. You did.
and it was warmly received. They were, I think you typically get 10 minutes, and they were like, "No, keep going. You're doing good here." So I ended up filling 25 minutes. So I was in heaven. I love this. But sure enough, my very first question, and I knew it was coming, was from I believe, one of the Weather Service folks in Springfield, Missouri. And
Oh, Springfield, yes.
and they said, well, that's fine, but what do we do about the duck boat situation
Oh, yeah.
in the news?
Well, that's
Wow.
a good point. I
Obvious
hadn't thought of that.
reasons.
Yep.
Right. And I knew this question was coming.
That is a good point, though.
It's a good point. It's a
really
very
is.
good point. And
That's a toughie.
all right, so basically my response to that was kind of like a non-response response. I remembered in the coverage after the fact of the duck boat that they were interviewing some of the duck boat people or whatever. And one of the quotes was something to the effect, and I'm not quoting this accurately, but it's the effect, was, well, they issue severe thunderstorm warnings all the time and nothing happens. Mm-hmm. So in essence, they were making my argument for me. Yes, the Weather Service was covering their bases for that particular tragedy, but nobody was paying attention.
Right.
And
Well, it's the same thing with tornadoes, and look at what Joplin,
right.
Yeah, that's a comment we got from a lot of people in Joplin. They
a
run the
lot of
sirens.
people.
Right.
Same
And
thing.
the assessment report
they-
that came out after
They
Joplin
had the
was
siren for every little thing.
right. And so I really, within every single core of my being, believe that there's got to be a better way for at least severe thunderstorm warnings. I think tornado warnings, at least for us, still have, for lack of a better phrase, cachet.
Right.
That people will still take these seriously. We may drive them nuts a few times a year, but they'll still take it seriously. But severe thunderstorm warnings,
They're a dime a dozen.
they're a dime a dozen. And heck, it's gotten to the point where I barely take them seriously.
Yeah.
And if I'm barely taking them seriously, that ain't good.
Right.
Well, the other way I look at it is that's one of the points of a watch is quite often as the Storm Prediction Center will put out like a severe thunderstorm watch for an area. And that ought to cover a lot of the lower end events that, hey, if there's a watch out, people, it's kind of their responsibility to kind of keep an eye out,
The Weather Service will
some
tell me, well,
lower-end
what do we
stuff.
do? How do we, all right, so let's just say you bump up, and I've had some pretty high-level talks with some of the high-level people within the Weather Service about this, and they'll say, well, what do we do? How do we, all right, so let's just say we change this criteria. How do we get people to bridge the gap? And that's where, they're already issuing these significant weather alerts or whatever, significant weather advisories. Mm-hmm. So maybe, they bump those up. There are some holes in this whole thing. I've had folks from the eastern region of the country say, yeah, this isn't going to fly. Why isn't it going to fly? Well, we've got all these trees and I had folks down. I talked to one of the Weather Service people in Brownsville, McAllen, and they're like, yeah, that won't fly here. I said, why won't it fly here? And they said, we have so much dilapidated housing that will come down in a decent gust of wind.
Oh.
Okay, because of the economic
So we need
conditions.
to keep the criteria the same.
So I was like, okay, now you're giving me some ideas.
That's a good point.
So all extremely good points. So my response to all of that, after thinking about it for a while and having a love for northern Michigan with their heavily forested areas.
Right.
So
And a lot of thunderstorms and derechos up there.
right. That knock down trees, and that's a whole, it's a big issue.
Yeah.
So I said, well, why can't we regionalize it then?
Right.
Why can't those of us, let's say in
That's a great idea.
Kansas City, Topeka, Wichita, Oklahoma City, which, by the way, issued like 900 severe thunderstorm warnings one year. Granted, they cover half the state or more than
Right.
half of the state. But Dodge City, Goodland, why can't we have our criteria maybe firm it up a little bit? Maybe 5 extra miles an hour on the wind, maybe make it 65, maybe make it
that a lot.
inch and a quarter or inch
Do
and
what
a
works
half
for
hail.
you.
Do what works for you.
That
Keep
makes
it
some sense.
maybe not office by office, but maybe clumps of offices.
Sure.
They're like, well, people will get confused. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, if you go from one place to another, from New York City to Kansas City, the criteria will be the different. will be different. People won't understand.
Is that big an issue, though, really?
Well, I said, have you looked at your heat advisories?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you looked at your winter storm warnings?
Right.
Have you looked at your other
We could even go to
products?
earthquakes. We have New Madrid fall, but it doesn't mean that's going to
Right.
blow any day, you know?
I said, people only, they're going to get the alert on their phone. They're not
Right.
caring about the criteria so
Right.
much
Yeah.
as we are caring.
They just want to know,
They just want to know bad
is there
storm
a
coming.
warning?
Right. So a bad storm in New York City is a big deal. A bad storm here in Kansas City, you're like,
it sounds like to me
so
that it was
what?
more like they just don't want to have to deal with more training.
It's
and-
I don't know. It's
thicker
culture.
manuals.
It's a culture
Yeah.
thing.
Thicker manuals.
Oh, yeah, like a couple more pages.
Right.
Big deal.
It's
I
a
mean,
culture thing, and
Yeah.
it's a fight.
But I really like that idea a lot. I think that shouldn't be let go.
I think,
I mean-
like I said, every core of my being, every fiber thinks that there's something to this.
Well, we've changed our criteria as time has gone on since, the beginning of the watches and warnings. They've been changed. And we even have little polygons instead of just straight
Right.
CYAs. We actually narrowed down warnings. So why give up
So-
now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Am I ever
Keep working on
right?
it.
And am I ever gently stirring of the pot? I've noticed that it seems to me that over the last few years that I'm seeing fewer and fewer polygons
I've noticed that too.
and more huge chunks of warnings coming out. And that's not doing anybody any good.
No.
That's kind of
That's back to the way it used to be.
Well, it validates their mentality of, the weatherman, get paid.
Right. Oh my gosh,
what
we
was
had a
the
thunderstorm warning 18,000 times and I just got a little gust of wind.
Right.
So I've noticed that becoming a little bit more prevalent,
Right.
and I haven't dug into the data on that. I don't think I want to dig into the data on that, and I don't know if that's because we're seeing a change of culture within the Weather Service of just warn them type stuff, and if you're not right, you're not right, or if
but
it's
at
not,
least we've covered ourselves in case something does
Right.
happen. Get called on.
and they get pressures
tough.
from
I get
They're
that.
they've got
reps.
they've got their own fights
Right.
that they're fighting.
Oh, sure.
Totally
Yeah.
get that.
And one
Absolutely.
thing is, nobody gets rewarded for not issuing a warning and nothing happens. It seems like, but if you don't issue a warning and something does happen,
Oh, yeah,
you
that's
really
way
hear about
worse.
I've,
And so that's
you know,
an
it used
issue.
to be back in the day that they were concerned about their false alarm situation. I've had numerous conversations with numerous Weather Service folks, friends of mine, and it seems like the false alarm thing is decreasing in terms of its importance.
Yeah.
I wonder if it has to do with budget or anything like that. Or I hate to say it, but political too.
Well, there could be some issues there.
there-
I don't know.
I don't think so yet, but
Wouldn't rule it out.
I would.
It does seem
would,
like there's some funky.
Would
things going on
25
right
years from now, they would like to be almost automated in issuing these? I think that would be a goal that they're trying to get to.
I
sounds like
have seen that myself. Yeah.
And I don't think that science is there. The technology isn't there unless they figure out a new radar system. I mean, it's better.
Well, I just saw
It's
one
good.
of those self-driving cars go down around
Right.
the street on the internet today, so they can't get that right yet. I mean, come on.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
But
Interesting conversation.
And speaking of other weather, our biggest issue usually in Kansas City is flash flooding.
right.
We have a lot of those, don't we?
And it doesn't get much. It gets press, but it doesn't get press.
Name the first place that floods the quickest here.
For us, the closest big issue we always seem to have is the bottom of Signal Hill,
Yes. Yes.
down there by the Quick Trip.
Yeah.
Now you're in the way of
Southwest
me
Boulevard?
getting an iced tea at the Quick Trip.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff right there. Yeah, we
You
can
will
tell.
swim over
Right?
there if you have to.
Hilarious watching people drive through that.
Oh, it's great. One of my favorite pastimes.
But yeah,
between-
that seems to be our biggest issues with injuries, deaths.
Yeah.
It seems, down in Southwest Boulevard, east of Troost at Brush Creek. It still needs
And they've
a lot
done amazing
of
work with
They
Rush
have.
Street's done fantastic.
They've done a fantastic,
But they
and they're doing that now with
needed-
Southwest, the Southwest Boulevard area.
Right.
Notice that.
A lot of work being done down there.
Good.
And so we have ways of mitigating these things. But when you see about the terrible flooding that happened a few years ago,
98?
435 down at 435 Johnson County,
Oh, yeah.
or actually down by Warnell and 435.
Yeah, where's the 4 people that died on the bridge near Truce?
So that would have been 1998,
Yeah,
right?
that was 98 where the
night of
Chiefs
the
were
Chiefs
playing.
game.
Yeah.
We just had the anniversary to
Yeah,
that a few
right.
weeks ago. So was it 8 people, 11 people?
I think
I want to say it was 8 to 11.
I want to say 8 total.
Okay.
I know 4 on that bridge alone. And then there was several others throughout the city.
Right. Kansas City's a flood city.
Oh, we are
It's
such
a
a flood
flood city.
zone. And of
It's
course,
pretty
look at
hilly.
93.
It's not a tornado city. It's
you
a
know,
flood city.
we have, I think it was 50, was it 55 was the biggest one besides 93
There's 54.
Oh, well, on a large scale.
on a large scale.
Yeah,
But
the
I
flash
mean,
flooding situation.
Yeah, the flash flooding, though, is just, it's a constant.
But, I talk to people about flash flooding and the whole turnaround, don't drown stuff. And you look at what happened, for example, the rescues that needed to be made down at 435 in Warnell
Right.
2-3 years ago during the summer, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And that's a situation where and Houston goes through this, where our land use has messed things up.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've built the 435 road, and when they're expanding that now to 8 lanes or whatever the heck they're doing, there's roads everywhere. There's construction everywhere, and we've robbed the land's ability to properly drain off.
Right. And we're right, and that's right by
So,
the bluff.
yeah,
I mean,
we're
that's
gonna
on the
have-
bluffs.
Right there at the Grandview Triangle, you've got the
Yes.
little Blue River right through there, creek that runs right through,
Right.
literally right underneath. That's why we have all those bridges
we have
going there.
floodplains everywhere.
So
around here.
as long as we keep building and we don't properly or take into account the serious rainfall events that happen allegedly
Especially
once
when we
every
have
100
training.
years, that seem to happen about every 5 years.
I'm going to laugh hard on that one.
So as long as we keep
100
doing
years.
this, yeah,
Right. Every year,
other
pretty
year, every
much.
third year.
Yeah.
Somebody's getting it. So as long as we keep doing this, we're going to have an issue.
Yeah.
And as long as, the Westport area, if their drainage isn't improved some way, somehow, we're going to always have issues
Yes.
with
Oh,
heavy.
Midtown's tough because you got a lot of architecture there, underground as well as above ground, that you've got to navigate. And then I think we do a little bit better on the Kansas side with stormwater, like particularly like Lenexa. They've done a fantastic job with stormwater, and now it's starting to bleed into Shawnee and kind of progress its way east a little bit. I think Olathe is hopping on board too, but I think the Kansas side you see a lot more. But Missouri just kind of lets it.
Yeah.
It's like, there was a railroad bed here, and we're just going to let that kind of hang out.
There are ways of improving things. I didn't read the report. I just saw it today, as a matter of fact, in a tweet. I'm not pronouncing the city right, I don't think. Endicott, Maryland, in the mountains of Maryland, that has been flooded out twice, and it's been on the national news about these terrible floods.
Okay.
And if you just Google search, you'll see these. I mean, just cars flowing down the roads.
Right.
And they're in a mountainous area where they have essentially built roads, and the city has thrived, and they've taken away all the drainage. So now when all the heavy rains that they get,
Yep.
especially with upslope conditions and blah, 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 they're having 2 and 3 years or something like that. Just terrible. I mean, something you would see out of like Europe type flooding.
I was going to say almost like a half mudslide, half water
I mean, it's just
type situation.
a mess there.
Sounds ugly.
But we've done that. We've robbed the land of a way of draining. And so it's in a convergence of rivers and streams and creeks, and
Plus, we have underwater streams.
got stuff going on.
We have 2 under our house.
Some pumps go all the time at my house
Yep.
because of whatever's going on underneath that.
Well, that's why we have 435 and stuff. Because back in 50, I went to a talk about Kansas City before I think it was the 55 flood, and how that was a community of people that came in from Mexico. And that was their area. And then after that flood, they all got washed out. So the city started building.
They had to
Here come the developers.
Here comes the developers.
Right.
It's a blessing.
But
it's
it
a curse.
still floods in that area.
And it,
I mean, it hasn't changed the fact. It's just made it worse.
Right.
So
anyway, so
So
flooding at Kansas City, I think everybody.
I'm telling you,
Everybody knows
we're
this.
going to get another 93. I mean, just
yeah.
Just when.
And so now let's see about the, I know we built a new levee up here because we had, flooding issues, up by Argosy.
year.
and-
Well, they just opened Gavin's Point up to like 80,000,
Right.
And
Right.
what they say they're going to leave it. We're leaving it that way for the next month.
This has
or the
got
next 3
trouble
months or so.
for next. I mean, if we have another,
People downstream
wet
are already
winter.
crying. Oh, we're in
Oh,
big
my
trouble.
gosh.
I mean, Nebraska and Iowa is still flood. I mean, they still
Oh,
have
yeah.
all sorts.
I
I
was
saw
kind of
pictures
worried
the other
this
day.
year, actually, whenever we would drive
Oh.
up north, by Highway
Yeah.
2 up there, how bad it was. I thought, eventually that's going to come our way.
Sure.
If it doesn't come your way, it may come your way next year, because if we freeze up the land here over the coming 2 months or whatever,
Yeah, and it's
that water's not
going
going to
nowhere.
evaporate.
Nope.
So you add in, if you potentially get another big winter, spring of summer of
Right.
snow and rain, here we go again next year.
Yeah.
no. Hope not.
And hope not, but
Yeah.
I think they're already, if they're still releasing all that water, they know.
Yeah.
They
Brace 'em
or
for
they know the
something.
potential.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they don't want to get caught with their
Right.
pants down on that one again.
And the on the Missouri side, at least, those levees and flood barriers that were destroyed and breached and messed up.
Well, they still
with
have
our-
dams to repair. There's bridges to repair.
They're not even close. Not even close to
I
get.
mean, they just got
that stuff
20.
fixed.
Well, the 29 was just open. What is it even all the way open yet? I
Yeah,
think
no,
it-
it's all the
They
way
got it
open.
all. Oh,
But
okay.
there have been some roads up in far northwest Missouri off of 29 that
Still
have been
shut
closed.
Oh,
again.
yeah, totally
Yeah.
closed.
And there's been bridges across the Missouri River closed
Yeah.
the whole
yeah, we've
summer
had to
and the
take
fall
different
here.
routes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as things change,
We need to adapt
we
with it.
need to
and we're
adapt and
not.
mitigate. Yep.
And,
Mitigate.
So, yeah, there needs to be a lot of discussions,
Yeah.
votes. We need to have
It's
MoDOT
but
and
it's
everybody
an
kind of
expensive
work
thing, too.
together,
You know,
and the
where's
National
this
Weather
money gonna
Service.
come
Not
from,
cheap.
right?
So here comes the fun part. Anytime I have a broadcaster on, I want to ask some funny questions
Okay.
before we wrap, because I did this to John
Okay.
on our first one. So
Now I'm nervous.
working at Channel 4 all these years, what are a viewer's call? Think of a viewer's call that you've had, or two, that just is burnt in your brain, either because it was funny, frightening, whatever. I mean, what do you know of any?
I try desperately,
situations?
not to answer the phone anymore.
Okay, well,
So
that's
that eliminates that.
That's smart.
that does not take you away from the social media standpoint
Well,
of
of
things.
course.
right?
Oh yeah,
So,
that's different from when I
So-
worked.
That's always the fun part.
I've had, I think guys overall are sort of fortunate that for the most part, we don't get treated as harshly as women do. Women take it on the chin and they get
Yeah.
way more abuse. You shouldn't get any abuse at all, really. If you have nothing nicer to say,
Right.
don't say
Right.
it. But women just really, whether it's appearance-based or
Yeah.
earrings or hair or it's just
Yes,
it's not
yes.
right. It's not right. And women now are starting to fight back within our industry. They're fighting back.
Good.
Yes.
But for me personally, this may sound strange. I don't get much. I did get about 2 weeks ago. Some guy on Facebook sent me a post, basically just not happy with me at all, and he ripped into me, and he said, "You're not funny. You're not smart. You're not. You don't do a very good job. You. I wish. I think he said, I wish you were still working weekends because I never did watch the weekend news before.
Ooh.
But he knew that you
Ouch.
worked
He knew that I was working
So he
weekdays, but
obviously-
I was messing up with his normal television viewing because
How
I
would
was
he
on the
know?
weekdays.
Well, how would he know that if he didn't watch?
Right. So he had reached his limit with me. And so it was, it was just a random, I was like, whoa. So now in this age of social media, you kind of learn. And so
Did you answer him?
Well, I didn't have to answer him because I decided, and I didn't mention who it was. It's a gentleman from Lewisburg. I didn't mention
And his name was Jim. Yeah.
I was like, Mom, why are you sending me that? I didn't mention who it was, but I snipped it out. I just kind of screen captured the gripe and I put it on Facebook. I said, well, I was having a good day until this came along.
How
And
did I miss that?
Facebook's a funny thing. It drives me absolutely insane. And yet when you put something like that on there, all of a sudden you get 1,500 comments about people who just go in the other direction and appreciate your work. And and in all honesty, that I've been in this for far too long. You don't like me, I don't care.
Right.
I really don't.
Yeah, that's
You
a
could
good
change the
attitude
channel.
to have it.
You know,
Yeah.
I way back when I was first starting, I took all that stuff not way too personal, but personally. And I've learned, and actually it was severe weather coverage when people would gripe at you
Right.
all the time.
Oh, because you're breaking
You're breaking into the
show.
right. And I took
Yeah.
that seriously at first. And now I'm like, whatever, delete,
who
delete,
cares?
delete, delete,
Yeah.
delete. So I've developed
why-
a very thick
Yeah.
skin, and so it doesn't bother me as long as my management doesn't send me the same email. We hate you. We don't think you're funny.
Yeah. Now that one you might want to pay
That
attention
one
to.
that one can't be deleted as easily.
Yeah. No. That one you kind of have to answer.
Right. So
But yeah, you can't please everybody. That's just impossible.
that's just the way.
Yeah.
Right. You know.
But could you imagine starting out now? Could you? I feel bad for these kids that are starting out in the social media age. I can't even wrap my brain around having to start my career out in this day and age. You know.
So the benefit to that is they know social media so much better than I know social
but then
media.
but
The negative to it is odds are they've got some stuff on social media that they don't want others to see. And
that they didn't think might affect their career later.
we had went to my college reunion last month, and we must have had this conversation 5 times about, thank God social media wasn't around when we were in school. Mm-hmm. We did some stupid things.
Yeah,
young people
we
do
said
stupid stuff.
stupid
Right.
things.
Right.
If my friends had phones in their pockets,
Oh, same here.
So
wouldn't be here now.
Heck, there's stuff
we may
I've
have
done 10 years
violated
ago
some
that
laws back in the day, possible. So I don't know how. I find it very, very challenging.
right.
Very challenging for the kids. For
Yes.
the kids, those kids these
Those
days.
crazy kids. Oh, it's a whole different world than it was when you and John were starting out 65 years ago. Yeah.
Get off my
when you had to
yard.
walk uphill 10 miles to get to the station.
The thing is, I don't know if it's better.
Yeah.
I love Twitter. I'm obsessed by Twitter. For my purposes, it is fabulous. Great weather content, great weather information,
Get right to the
ideas.
Hashtag Mark. Yeah.
Yes.
Makes it very easy.
Breaking weather information, fabulous. Facebook, to me, I'm indifferent to Facebook. I've kind of reconciled my feelings about Facebook a little bit. I'll play the game, but whenever I retire, I'm disappearing from Facebook.
Yeah. Delete.
Instagram, I have no idea what to do with Instagram.
I haven't even.
It's hard with weather. It's hard with weather.
You could put like pretty pictures on there and whatever.
Yeah.
I just
Post your lunch.
and the younger kids seem to be figuring out Instagram much better than I am. So
Yeah, I
those
just
are
heard
obviously the
Jennifer
big
Aniston
three.
just got on Instagram and actually broke it for a day. Yeah, seriously, shut
I
down.
will never break
doubt.
Instagram.
I
will never
still don't
break
even
it.
know how to use Instagram or any of those.
It's a pretty picture thing. It's I mean, and,
Yeah.
and allegedly, it's nicer. The comment, you don't go down the wormholes. In some of the comments.
Yeah, it's not that
It's not
back and
nasty.
forth commentary driven that Facebook is.
Yeah,
It's not
that part of
You're
You're
not
not
getting
getting
into
in the
the
arena.
political stuff and all that
Yeah.
other junk that Facebook is filled with.
Yeah, it's tough though. I've developed a thick skin, but every once in a while, if somebody says something, it's like, when you have to be a meanie.
I think when
You know?
you're young, obviously you're much more vulnerable to that. I think
I seem to be the opposite. When I was young,
you're getting
I didn't
old.
care.
You didn't care, and now that you're
No.
older,
Now she cares
Now that
too
I'm
much. She
older-
gets on
Really?
Facebook and
Yeah,
oh,
it
people
seems-
said this to me.
Boy, back when I was young, I'd
Ouch.
do anything and not care what people thought. But now I'm like, oh gosh, I just said that or did that. Oh, what do they think? You know, and especially after I give an interview or presentation, I'm like, did I come off okay? You know,
oh well, I think that's normal though. That
you know. But but when I was younger, I was like, no, I'm kind of the opposite.
interesting.
So, but I think it also has to do with social media. I really do. Because, again, when I was younger, there wasn't any. I'm right at that cusp as a Gen Xer, where I have 1 foot before, 1 foot after.
Right.
You know, so. Well, anyways, Joe, anything else you want to talk about?
Oh my gosh,
I had something I thought I'd mention.
bring it
Go
on.
ahead.
Joe did a weathercast before he came over here, and he did something I used to do years ago when I was in TV. He drove up out in the driveway here, got out of the car, and he realized he still had his microphone on for the station.
My audio guy at the station is like, where the? Yeah, I was driving here, and I was
Was
like,
it still hot when you were in the car
Oh,
going,
it's
this
still on the
damn
whole
station?
way. The whole way it's hot. God, they probably didn't hear me cursing up a storm. But yes, I have been known to take. I just get in my own little world. And, we had just done a football promo since we're showing Thursday Night Football, and so I was like, okay, I got to go, and just never thought about it.
Well, I used to do that occasionally when I worked at TV, so
You just
don't feel bad about it.
absent-minded, which is
Very
I
easy
could
to
I'm
do.
understand
very
that.
strong at the absent-minded game.
Well, you're
these
doing
days.
this in your sleep at this point. I mean, you can.
You know, it's funny because yes and no. I feel very, very fortunate that I get my engines revved up if I could just find one little nugget, one little stat, one little tidbit of trivia, and my day is made. And
Yeah.
I'll show it and I'll talk about it, and people will care, but I will be so into it. And so, I don't know if we want to go into this tangent, but I'm good at tangents.
Go for it.
Last night, did you notice last night the smell to the air?
I wasn't outside last night.
Were you
Well,
outside
I
at
was
all?
outside a couple times, but I'm not the most observant person.
Yeah,
so
I
I
had-
didn't
I-
really notice.
Did you notice it? last
I
night?
had a few people asking me about that. They're like, what?
really?
Social
What is
media
that
posts. It's like,
smell?
what's.
What's that
I heard
smell?
the
There was some going
wind
on.
when the front.
You heard the
when
wind, right.
front
Oh,
came
yeah.
out.
You heard that?
So at around 7:23 last night on Twitter, I got a direct message from a lady who said, "It's going to sound strange, but the air smells like poop."
Really? Like poop?
Wow.
Poop.
Okay.
I
was
would
like,
not know how to
huh.
answer that.
That's weird. So I said, "Well, hold on. I'll go outside and
I
take
could
a
think
couple
about.
of whiffs."
I was going to say I could think about 15 things to say about
Right.
that.
So I go outside and take a couple of deep breaths, and I'm like, I don't know.
Sorry, that's
I said,
funny.
well, maybe. And so I go back in and I responded to the lady about that. And I said, it's just weird. So I decided to take her little snippet of a question to me.
Okay.
Why does the air smell like poop? And put it on Facebook and say, is this a thing right now? Is anybody else
Is that?
getting this? And sure freaking enough, within 20 minutes, I have 500 comments
Seriously.
Really?
from people from Chillicothe, Missouri to Denver, Colorado saying,
What?
oh yeah, the air smells like poop.
Did the wind shift and it came from one of the grain elevators or one of
It
the...
was more than that.
Yeah.
Stockyard or something.
So
I
now
got it. I
we got to
know.
figure this out. Why does the air smell like poop?
I think I know the answer.
And so that's a conversation that I decided, you know what? I'm going to call my friends at the Weather Service.
Okay.
Guys, have you heard about this yet? And they were like, no.
Sulfur.
I said, go outside and take a whiff. Call me back. They go out, take a whiff,
advice.
and they're like, son of a gun. The air smells like poop.
Does it
What the
smell
heck
like
is
Dodge
going
City?
on?
Yeah.
That's right. So now we're having a meteorological discussion about why the
It
air
smells
smells like poop. And we're looking at the soundings, and the answer was in the soundings. The cold front that came through last night
Okay.
was about 2,000 feet deep.
All right.
Sure.
We were inverted above it,
Okay.
I was going to say there's got to be an inversion in there.
right? So up in Iowa and Nebraska,
Uh-huh.
tremendous amount of feedlots, obviously, a lot of
Sure.
farming.
Boom. Nailed it.
There you go. And so during this time of year, there's a lot of spreading of manure going on up there anyway.
Okay.
And apparently, it can happen where the smells from up there get caught in the cold front. And because of the inversion, they're not mixing out and are brought to us.
Wow.
Okay.
I've never experienced this before, but I was Googling around last night looking
Wow.
air. Why does the air smell like poop? And I saw.
We also call that the North Kansas City smell.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it was just so widespread.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's
And
unusual. That's very unusual.
so all of a sudden now at 8:45, well, we've got a thing here. I've got something to talk about. Why does the air smell like poop? So now I'm doing a mad scramble trying to create a graphic about why the air smells like poop.
So you got to draw an inversion and all that
Right.
stuff. Yeah, how
So-
it's warmer air loft or the cold air. Yeah.
So
a cow.
I needed to keep it more simple
Sure.
because I kind of alluded to what you were talking about, John, about the inversion stuff, but I tried to keep it more simple. I was like, well, how am I going to show this? I was like, well, there's only one way to show this. Got to use the poop emojis.
Yes.
So
course.
I dot a map with poop emojis all over Iowa and Nebraska. Talk about the cold front coming through, and this is why the air smells like poop. And it went nuts on social. I mean,
I'll bet.
people were laughing their what's off
Oh, yeah.
about all this. And
Awesome.
I was in my own little Joe geeky world, and I
That's
got to
cool.
say the word poop 20 times on the news. And
When
I
do you
thought
get
that was
that
just the
opportunity?
greatest darn
with it.
night.
Oh,
Run with
how
it.
did I
In my
miss that?
Practically my
I don't think
television broadcasting career was talking about poop.
So, from a meteorological standpoint, how do we fire back?
yeah, well, you just take it.
You need a, I don't know, what do
to
you
be honest with you, Joe,
Good warm front, reverse the winds.
growing
There
up
you
like
go.
2 miles
Make it happen.
south of here, I actually have experienced
Yes.
that. And we go, there's that Northtown smell.
Yes.
Because it's usually coming from the steel mills or, that sulfur.
Yes.
But, the stockyards are
But it
right
would be
by.
pretty much localized.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Instead of very widespread
So
like
this
that.
was virtually-
But
Covers
the
several
stockyards are
states.
right by the train tracks, right?
I heard
Over there.
one person in
Right.
Trenton say, "No, I don't smell anything," but every single other
Didn't
person
make it to Trenton, huh?
right? I guess whatever. But there, I mean, it blew my mind. And so during my weathercast, I sent my anchors out to go smell the air. Say, get back to me by
There
the
you
end of
go.
this weathercast.
Report back to me.
Report back and tell me if the air still smells like poop. And so they were like, "Oh yeah, it still smells like poop."
Yeah.
So it was a blast.
Oh, that is
and
awesome.
on
Well,
a-
now whenever we get a cold front, I'm going to go outside and
go
see if it
outside,
smells like
smell the
poop.
darn air.
I know. If I can hear the trains,
Yeah.
smell for poop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tells you the winds up.
It was those little nugget nights are
That makes it all worth it. doesn't it?
last night was just I was happy.
Fun.
And there are screen grabs of me now running around on Facebook of me pointing out all the poopy emojis. So
I know after this airs,
that's
everybody's going
just
to be
money
looking all
in
that
the
up.
bank, right? Just money in the bank right there.
That's so cool.
awesome.
Classic.
And where can people find your blog?
So almost every day, I write a weather blog,
Yep.
fox4kc.com/Joe's blog. I did not Did I talk about the poop today?
I was going to say,
I don't know if I did because I had so much on Facebook last night because first you had to talk about, yes, it smells. And then you have to talk about why it smells. Those are different posts happening there. But it's if you're into weather, if you're a weather geek, and if you're not a weather geek, it's a great way to learn.
It's a good blog, and you put some great forecasting stuff in there as well, just telling us very concisely what's coming down the pipe.
I highly recommend it if you want just a little bit step further than your forecast.
It's kind of like a little Weather 101, and we'll tell you why certain things happen, and
you can learn more about poop.
And you could learn everything. Some people have compared it to poop sometimes, but yeah, it's a fun little learning thing, and it's a passion.
Yeah. No, your blog is excellent.
Yeah.
You're very to the point. You're
very
no, seriously, anyone can read it. It's very to the point. It's very layman, which
if I could
appreciate.
Teach some people some stuff, that would be a good thing.
Exactly. Right. So if you want to learn a little bit more than just what your nightly forecasts are, and you want to know why you put that forecast out, or a little bit more about your upcoming ones, please check out his blog.
FOX4KC.com/Joe's blog.
Yep.
There you go.
Excellent. Well, Joe, I want to thank you for coming on
This
tonight.
was a blast.
Appreciate it.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You are such a sweetheart.
You're very kind.
Yes, we love you dearly.
Stop in anytime.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool.
Please come back, and we're going to talk more about poop. And,
good.
And in fact, I will put on Facebook the next time there's the poop smell. I will let you know.
Thank you.
With this noise, it'll be really easy for me to smell
the Paul
that poop.
Revere.
Paul Revere of poop.
Yeah. When I hear that cold front coming through, and I hear the wind and the
poop alert
trains,
in effect,
I'm going to go out and check for the
go.
poop smells. So, anyways, no, seriously, Joe, thank you for taking the time out and coming in before because you're getting ready to go in the air.
Yeah.
So
we gotta get you. What time
back
is it?
to the station.
Oh my gosh. Gotta go. Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. We're going to have on our next one, we're going to just do us three, I believe.
Sounds good.
We got some things to talk about and
Cool.
some other weather events. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and where's all of our places? Would you please, Mr. James?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. IT guy.
Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Shazam, Spotify, YouTube. You name it, we're there. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. What the Weather Podcast.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in to What the Weather. Thank you, Joe, for being here. And we will see you all very soon. Keep an eye to the sky, people. And we're out.
See ya.
See ya.